You're 3 days old, wrapped in silk that cost more than most peasants earn in a year, and the elderly clan master is already examining you like a piece of pottery that might be defective. He checks your grip by letting you clutch his finger, nods approvingly at your warrior's grasp, then casually mentions that if you'd been born with any physical defects, this conversation would be happening at the bottom of a river instead of in a nice warm room. Your parents nod seriously like this is totally reasonable quality control, and not, infanticide with a philosophical justification. Welcome to feudal Japan's warrior class, where your entire life's trajectory was determined before your umbilical cord was even cut, and Take Your Child to Work Day involves actual swords and the very real possibility of ceremonial suicide. If stories like this make you grateful you were born in an era with child labor laws and reasonable expectations for toddlers, subscribe to Lasting Legacy for more journeys through history's most intense family traditions. Your father, Takeda Yoshimoto, is a samurai who serves the local daimyo and takes his role so seriously that he practices his sword forms in the garden at dawn regardless of weather, illness, or the fact that he's already mastered them 20 years ago. You've watched him stand in a snowstorm doing the same cutting motion 500 times while your mother casually mentions that he once continued practice during a minor earthquake because the enemy won't stop attacking just because the ground is shaking. Your father's response? Exactly. These are your role models. This is your future. Your mother, Hanako, comes from another warrior family and was married to your father in an arrangement made when she was 8 years old by people who'd never asked her opinion about anything, ever. She's taught you that the 3 most important things in life are honor, duty, and never showing emotion even when you're definitely feeling emotions, which is basically all the time. She demonstrates this principle daily by maintaining perfect composure while your father accidentally sets his hakama on fire during a demonstration of fire resistance training that nobody asked for. The hakama is visibly burning. She says nothing. This is considered proper behavior. You're doomed. Your childhood home isn't technically a home. It's a fortified compound designed to withstand siege warfare, which really says something about your family's social calendar expectations and general trust in their neighbors. The beautiful gardens everyone admires? Those are strategically designed with hidden weapon caches and sightlines for archers. Your mother points this out during what you thought was a pleasant walk to see the cherry blossoms. See that decorative rock? Hides 6 arrows. That bamboo grove? Perfect cover for defensive positions. That peaceful bridge? Excellent choke point for enemy advancement. You're 5. You just wanted to look at pretty flowers. Instead, you're getting a tactical briefing. The koi pond? Deep enough to hide in during an attack, and your father has made you practice holding your breath underwater, just in case the castle falls and you need to escape through the moat. The peaceful tea house where ladies supposedly practice delicate arts? Has secret compartments for emergency swords, tripwires that release smoke bombs, and a false floor hiding armor. Your family doesn't just live somewhere, they tactically occupy it. You once tried to play hide-and-seek with the servants' children and accidentally triggered 3 separate defensive mechanisms. Your father's response wasn't anger, it was pride that the defenses worked. You were stuck in a net hanging from a tree for 45 minutes. The first test of your warrior potential comes embarrassingly early. At 6 months old, they place a sword and a writing brush in front of you to see which one you reach for first in some ancient tradition that supposedly reveals your destiny. You reach for neither, you try to eat your own foot, which apparently isn't one of the meaningful symbolic choices they were hoping for. Your father looks disappointed. Your mother remains expressionless because showing disappointment would be unseemly. Your grandfather mutters something about these modern children, even though you're literally a baby who just discovered you have feet and they're within mouth reach. They try the test again a week later. This time you reach for the brush and everyone relaxes until you immediately throw it at the family cat. The cat, Tora, who is older than you and significantly more dignified, gives you a look of profound disdain before walking away with more grace than you'll achieve in your entire life. Your grandmother suggests that maybe you'll be a scholar. Your grandfather suggests that maybe you'll be a disgrace. Your father suggests more training. This is his solution to everything. Your actual training begins at age 3 when most children are learning to not fall down while walking. You're learning to not fall down while holding a wooden sword that weighs approximately half your body weight. Your instructor, Sensei Hayato, is a grizzled veteran with more scars than original skin, missing 3 fingers on his left hand, and a teaching philosophy that can be summarized as suffering builds character. And I'm here to build you so much character you'll be architecturally sound. Day 1, you hold a basic stance for an hour. Your legs shake so badly you look like you're trying to perform an interpretive dance about earthquakes. Sensei Hayato is unimpressed. My grandmother could hold that stance better, he notes. And she's been dead for 6 years. You're starting to notice that everyone in this family has a dead grandmother they invoke as the superior example. You suspect these grandmothers were all secretly superheroes. The training is relentless and specifically designed to remove any trace of the soft, playful childhood you might have enjoyed in literally any other social class. While merchant children are playing games and farmer children are at least getting occasional breaks between chores, you're learning 17 different ways to kill a man with a sword and why 14 of them are considered dishonorable. The distinction between honorable killing and dishonorable killing seems very important to everyone but incredibly confusing to you, a child who would prefer not to be learning about killing at all, but especially doesn't understand why stabbing someone in the front is noble while stabbing them in the back is shameful. They're equally dead. Nobody asks your opinion on this philosophical inconsistency. At age 5, you're introduced to the concept of kata, prearranged forms that you'll practice 10,000 times until your muscle memory is so ingrained you could perform them while unconscious, which is apparently the goal. Actually, Sensei Hayato tests this theory by waking you up at random times in the night and demanding you demonstrate forms. You fail the first 17 times, which earns you extra practice sessions, which means even less sleep, which means you fail more tests, which means more practice in a vicious cycle that explains why all the adult samurai look perpetually exhausted and slightly homicidal. The schedule is genuinely insane. You wake at dawn, and by dawn, they mean that pre-dawn darkness, when even the roosters are still asleep and questioning their life choices. Immediately, you're outside practicing strikes against a wooden post that has seen more violence than most actual enemies. 1,000 strikes. Every morning. Your arms feel like they're being detached from your body by angry gods. After strikes, you run. Not jog. Run. Through the countryside, in full training gear, while Sensei Hayato follows on horseback like some kind of mobile disappointment distribution system, shouting corrections about your running form because apparently even running has a proper technique you're doing wrong. Breakfast is a reward for not dying during morning training. It consists of rice, miso soup, and pickled vegetables that taste like someone tried to preserve regret. Your family eats in complete silence because talking during meals is considered uncouth. You once sneezed during breakfast and your grandfather stared at you for a full minute like you'd committed a war crime. You never sneeze during a meal again. You're not sure you've sneezed since. The trauma runs deep. The educational component of your training is equally intense. You're learning to read and write classical Chinese characters that have more strokes than you have years of life. Each character looks like someone dropped a basket of angry spiders onto paper and traced where they walked. Your calligraphy teacher, Master Sato, is a tiny elderly man who hits your hand with a stick every time a brush stroke isn't perfect, which is every single time because you're a child with developing fine motor skills, not a master calligrapher who's been writing these characters since before your ancestors were born. Too much pressure. Too little pressure. Wrong angle. Are you trying to shame your ancestors? Your ancestors have been dead for generations and probably have bigger concerns than your brush technique, but pointing this out seems unwise. You're also studying military strategy through texts written by people who thought the height of tactical genius was comparing warfare to moving water, which is poetic but not particularly helpful when you're 7 and trying to understand how to position troops. Be like water, the text says. Flow around obstacles. You're not water. You're a small child who can barely flow to the bathroom without tripping over your own hakama. The wise general strikes where the enemy is weak, like water finding the lowest point. You once tried applying this wisdom to stealing sweets from the kitchen by flowing around your mother's watchful eye. You got caught and had to practice sword forms for 3 extra hours as punishment. Water doesn't get grounded. The metaphor falls apart under scrutiny. Then there's the etiquette training, because apparently, you need to know the exact correct way to bow depending on whether you're greeting someone of higher rank, equal rank, lower rank, someone you've wronged, someone who's wronged you, someone whose father once saved your uncle's life, or someone whose presence offends you, but you must be polite to anyway. The number of different bows you're expected to master is genuinely absurd. There's the informal bow at 15 degrees, the formal bow at 30 degrees, the "I'm so sorry I exist and am wasting your oxygen" bow at 45 degrees, the "thank you for not having my family executed for breathing too loudly" bow at 60 degrees, and approximately 17 variations in between based on context, time of day, weather conditions, and phase of the moon. Okay, maybe not the moon, but you honestly can't tell anymore. You practice bowing so much that you develop permanent tension in your neck muscles and an irrational hatred of geometric angles. Your etiquette teacher, Lady Fumiko, demonstrates each bow with perfect grace while explaining that the depth of the bow must reflect the exact social distance between you and the other person, adjusted for the formality of the occasion, modified by any recent family political events, and incorporating seasonal variations because apparently spring bows are different from winter bows. When you ask why, she looks at you like you've asked why the sky is up. Because it is tradition, she says, which is the answer to every why question in this household. You're beginning to suspect that tradition is just a fancy word for, we started doing this once and we're too stubborn to stop. At age 8, you participate in your first real ceremony, your Junpuku coming-of-age celebration, where you receive your first real sword and a new adult name. The name your parents gave you as a baby? Goodbye to little Taro. That name is gone now, replaced with something that probably means strong warrior of virtue, but really just marks you as property of the clan's eternal war machine. Your new name is Takeda Masanori, which your father explains with a straight face means correct principle and is meant to inspire you to always follow the righteous path. You're 8. You still sometimes forget to tie your sandals correctly. The pressure of living up to a name that means correct principle is already giving you anxiety. The sword they give you is beautiful, deadly, and comes with a lecture about how it contains your soul, and you should treat it better than you treat yourself, which sets up some interesting psychological dynamics for your teenage years. Your father explains that you must clean the sword daily, sleep with it next to you, never let it touch the ground, and generally treat it like a deity that happens to be shaped like a weapon. This sword is your life, he intones dramatically. Without it, you're nothing. You're 8. You're pretty sure you're something even without a sword, like maybe a child, but this seems like a bad time to bring that up. Your first real combat training against other students is less martial arts movie and more controlled violence between children who are trying very hard not to cry while also trying to inflict maximum pain on each other. You're matched against other warrior clan children, including your main rival Noboru, who's bigger than you, better than you, comes from a more prestigious family, and never misses an opportunity to point out all of those facts with the casual cruelty only children can achieve. During practice, he accidentally hits you hard enough to leave bruises that will last a week. You accidentally sweep his legs and dump him on his face in the mud, which gets in his mouth and nose. Sensei Hayato watches this mutual assault and nods approvingly. Good spirit, he says, which is samurai teacher speak for, I'm thoroughly enjoying watching you children hurt each other for my entertainment. The rivalry with Noboru escalates to the point where you're both trying to outdo each other in every single activity. He practices forms 500 times. You practice 600 times, even though your arms are screaming. You memorize 10 classical texts. He memorizes 12. He breaks 3 training dummies. You break 4, even though the 4th one was an accident and you definitely got in trouble for it. The competition is exhausting and probably unhealthy, but it's also the closest thing you have to a friendship because spending every day trying to surpass someone creates a weird bond. You hate him. You also would probably die for him. Feudal Japanese childhood is confusing. The pressure to perform perfectly is constant and psychologically crushing. Every movement must be precise. Every word must be measured. Every emotion must be hidden behind a mask of stoic composure. You're 10 years old, and you've already mastered the art of looking calm while internally screaming, which is honestly a skill that would serve you well in modern corporate meetings, but right now just means you're a very stressed child who's very good at hiding it. Your face says, "I am at peace with the universe." Your internal monologue says, "I am going to explode and take everyone with me." Then comes the tea ceremony training, and you discover that warriors aren't just expected to be good at violence. They're also expected to be good at sitting very still while performing an elaborate ritual that turns making tea into a 4-hour philosophical meditation on the nature of existence. The way of tea is the way of the warrior, your tea master, Senrikyu, not that one, a different guy with the same name, because Japan has 5 names everyone shares. Explains while you try not to fall asleep in the Seiza position that's cutting off circulation to your legs. Your feet have gone completely numb. You're fairly certain they've died and your body just hasn't informed you yet. Notice the sound of the water, he whispers reverently. You notice your legs have no feeling. Observe the steam rising. You observe that you can't feel your toes. Be present in this moment. You're present in a moment of physical agony. The tea ceremony teaches patience, mindfulness, and acceptance. You've learned patience, specifically the patience to endure this torture without screaming. Each movement has meaning. The meaning of your leg movement is blood flow has completely stopped and medical intervention may be required. After 2 hours of sitting, when he finally says you can move, you try to stand and immediately fall over because your legs have completely stopped functioning. You crash into the tea preparation area, knocking over the carefully arranged utensils. Senrikyu looks at the chaos and says, "Perhaps we will try again tomorrow." You leave the tea house by crawling because walking is no longer an option your body offers. Your father sees you crawling and nods approvingly. "Good dedication to tea ceremony," he says. "Nothing about this is good." Your first Real test comes at age 12 when your clan gets involved in a territorial dispute with a neighboring daimyo over a piece of land that neither side actually needs, but both sides refuse to yield because that would mean losing face, which is apparently worse than losing lives. Real war is nothing like training. It's chaos, terror, and the immediate realization that all those kata you practiced won't help you when an arrow is flying at your face, and you suddenly remember that arrows don't care about your perfect form. You're assigned to the rear guard because you're still young, but rear guard in feudal Japanese warfare still means definitely in danger of dying, just slightly less immediately than the front guard. Your armor, which seemed impressive in the compound, now feels like wearing an oven in summer while also trying to fight. You can barely see out of the helmet. The chest plate restricts your breathing. The shoulder guards keep hitting you in the face when you turn your head. You're starting to understand why all the veteran samurai look so tired. They've been fighting while wearing cooking equipment. Your first battle is a nightmare of noise, blood, and discovering that killing people in reality is absolutely nothing like practicing on wooden dummies. Wooden dummies don't scream. They don't bleed. They don't look at you with very real human fear before you. You can't finish that thought. An enemy soldier charges at you and your training takes over. Your body does the kata, performs the movements, executes the technique. Somewhere in your brain, Sensei Hayato is shouting, "Proper form." The enemy falls. You vomit in your helmet. This is not how the scrolls described glorious combat. The aftermath of battle is worse than the fighting. You're sitting in the camp, trying not to think about what you just did, trying to clean vomit out of your helmet, trying to understand how you're supposed to feel about having killed someone who is just following orders from his lord the same way you're following orders from yours. Your hands shake no matter how much you try to steady them. Your father sits down beside you. You expect comfort. Maybe reassurance. Maybe some wisdom about coping with the psychological trauma of taking a life. Instead, he says, the first battle is always hard. The second one will be easier. By the 10th, you won't feel anything at all. He says this like it's a good thing, like emotional numbness is a goal to aspire to rather than a symptom of deep psychological damage. Then he stands up, pats your shoulder once, and walks away to clean his sword. That's it. That's the counseling session. You're 12 years old, and you've just learned that the path forward involves systematically destroying your own humanity until you're an efficient killing machine who doesn't feel inconvenient emotions like guilt or horror. That night, you can't sleep. Every time you close your eyes, you see the face of the man you killed. He was young, probably not much older than 16. He had a scar on his left cheek. You remember these details with horrible clarity. Nobody told you that you'd remember. In all the training, all the lectures about honor and duty, nobody mentioned that the faces would stay with you forever. By 15, you've participated in 6 more battles, countless skirmishes, and one siege that lasted 3 months and ended with everyone involved looking like they'd aged 10 years and lost several parts of their souls to the void. You've lost friends, other young warriors who you trained with, who you competed with, who you grew up with. Noboru, your rival who you hated and would have died for, took an arrow to the throat in the second battle. He died choking on his own blood while you held him, and his last words were, "Did I hold my form?" Yes, Noboru. Your form was perfect. You died with excellent technique. That's what matters, apparently. The romantic notion of the warrior's path has been thoroughly destroyed by the reality that warfare is mostly just politically motivated murder with better PR and nicer poetry. The scrolls talk about honor and glory. The reality is mud, blood, disease, and dying because your lord wanted a slightly larger rice field. One of your closest friends died from dysentery during the siege. Not in glorious combat. Not defending something meaningful. He died from bad water and worse sanitation. They wrote that he fell honorably in battle. The lie is more important than the truth. The political maneuvering within the clan is its own kind of warfare, except instead of swords, everyone uses elaborate courtesy and passive-aggressive gift-giving. Your family's position depends on maintaining favor with the daimyo, which means participating in elaborate social rituals, giving expensive gifts you absolutely cannot afford, and constantly watching for rivals who want your position and will spread rumors to undermine you. One of your father's fellow samurai, Ishida, spreads a rumor that your family line has Korean ancestry, which is completely false, but socially devastating in a culture obsessed with pure bloodlines and racial superiority. Your father has to spend months and significant resources proving the rumor false. He hires genealogists to trace your family tree back 12 generations. He hosts elaborate gatherings where he displays ancient family documents. He gives expensive gifts to influential people who can verify your pure Japanese heritage, all while maintaining perfect composure because showing anger would be admitting the rumor bothered him, which would be seen as weakness. You watch your father spend the equivalent of a small fortune combating a lie, all while pretending it's no trouble at all. The performance is exhausting to witness. Living it must be destroying him. At 18, you're considered a full adult warrior and given more responsibilities, which mostly means more opportunities to die for your lord's ambitions. You're sent as part of a delegation to the capital, which sounds prestigious until you realize it's actually a polite hostage situation. Your daimyo is sending his retainers' children to the shogun's court to ensure good behavior. It's insurance. Your insurance. You spend 6 months in Kyoto learning that political warfare is just as dangerous as the regular kind, just with more poetry and passive-aggressive flower arrangements. The court is a nest of vipers all pretending to be friends while plotting each other's destruction. Every conversation is layered with double meanings. Every gift has 3 interpretations. Every poem is a coded message. You have to learn to speak in elaborate metaphors where the cherry blossoms fall early this year might mean, "I'm planning to kill you next month," or "I'm having an affair with your wife," or "I genuinely just noticed that the cherry blossoms fell early." And figuring out which meaning is correct can be the difference between life and death. There's a whole political incident because you arrange flowers slightly wrong for a meeting with a visiting dignitary. Wrong flowers. Wrong vase. Wrong everything, apparently. The dignitary is offended. Your lord is embarrassed. You're sent home in disgrace. Your crime? You used winter flowers in spring. This is apparently worse than murder, which people do regularly and everyone just writes poetry about it afterward. But wrong seasonal flowers? Unforgivable. Your marriage is arranged when you're 20 to a woman from an allied clan you've met exactly twice. Her name is Tomo. She's 17, and she looks about as thrilled with this arrangement as you are, which is to say not at all. She's been trained in the ways of a warrior's wife, which means she can run a household, manage servants, perform tea ceremony, arrange flowers, and kill someone with a naginata if the situation requires it. Your first conversation lasts about 30 seconds and consists entirely of formal greetings. You're going to spend the rest of your lives together. This is fine. Everything is fine. The wedding is elaborate, expensive, and attended by people who are definitely plotting against each other while pretending to celebrate your union. The ceremony lasts 6 hours. You're not allowed to eat, speak, or show any emotion. You kneel in formal position for so long that when you finally stand, your legs have forgotten their purpose and you nearly collapse. Tomo catches your arm, which is the first physical contact you've had, and whispers, "Same," under her breath. It's the first genuine human moment in hours of ritual performance. Your wedding night is awkward because neither of you knows each other. You're both products of a culture that views emotional vulnerability as weakness. And your mother has given you instructions about consummation that were somehow both extremely detailed and completely unhelpful. "Maintain composure," she said. "Fulfill your duty." "Thanks, Mom." Very romantic. Tomo's mother apparently gave her similar advice because you both approach the situation like it's a military exercise that must be completed according to protocol. It takes months before you can have an actual conversation instead of just performing the roles of dutiful husband and wife. The breakthrough comes when you find her in the garden at midnight, and she's clearly been crying even though she immediately wipes her face and pretends she wasn't. You're supposed to pretend you don't notice. Instead, you sit down next to her and say, "I hate it too." She looks at you, genuinely shocked that you've broken protocol to acknowledge a feeling. Then she laughs, actually laughs, which you haven't heard her do. "I thought I was alone in that," she says. You're not alone. You're both trapped in the same beautiful, honorable, suffocating prison. The turning point comes when you're 25 and witness your lord order the execution of a loyal retainer for a minor infraction. The man served tea incorrectly at an important meeting. Not poison tea. Not rebellious tea. Just tea at the wrong temperature. For this, he must commit seppuku to preserve honor. The man dies with perfect composure, disemboweling himself while his son watches from the assembled crowd. Everyone pretends this is noble instead of horrific. His son is 14. He watches his father die for serving lukewarm tea. Something breaks in you that day. You realize the system you've dedicated your life to, the honor you've killed for, the duty that's consumed your entire existence. It's all just a beautiful story covering the reality that your weapon's wielded by people who see you as expendable. The honor is fake. The glory is propaganda. The duty is just obedience with better marketing. You've built your entire identity around serving a system that would kill you for a minor social infraction without a second thought. But you can't leave. You can't rebel. You can't even openly question. Because that's not how the system works. Warriors who break with their lord either die or become ronin, masterless samurai who are considered less than nothing in the social hierarchy, treated worse than peasants, starving on roadsides, selling their swords to bandits. So you do what samurai do, you continue serving while slowly dying inside, maintaining perfect external composure while your internal world crumbles like a castle wall in an earthquake. By 30, you've risen to a position of minor authority within the clan. You have young warriors under your command, and you see yourself in their eyes, the same dedication, the same belief in honor, the same certainty that this path is noble and righteous. You know what's coming for them. You know the disillusionment, the trauma, the slow realization that they're cogs in a machine that doesn't care about them as people. You could warn them. But instead, you train them the same way you were trained, because breaking the cycle would mean admitting the whole thing was wrong, and that admission would invalidate everything you've suffered, and you can't handle that. So the cycle continues. The final irony comes when you're 45, considered old for a warrior, training your own son in the same brutal methods that were used on you. He's 7, struggling to hold a basic stance, his small legs shaking from the effort. He looks up at you with the same round face you once had, the same hope that maybe you'll show mercy, the same innocent belief that his father will protect him from suffering. You see yourself in him, that child who wanted to look at flowers instead of learning killing angles. You want to tell him it's okay, that being a child should involve playing and laughing, not preparing for a lifetime of violence and psychological destruction. Instead, you say, "My instructor was harder on me. You're fortunate I'm being lenient." And you believe it because you've convinced yourself that the abuse was necessary, that it made you strong, that suffering builds character. You've become exactly what you feared. You've become the system. And your son will one day stand where you're standing, perpetuating the same cycle, because that's what warrior families do. They turn pain into tradition and call it honor. You die at 53, not in glorious battle, but from infected wounds sustained in a minor skirmish over a border dispute that was resolved politically 3 days after the fighting, making all the deaths completely pointless. Your death has the aesthetic of honor. You die at home, surrounded by family, after giving final wisdom to your sons that you don't even believe, but must say because it's what's expected. The reality is you're dying from preventable infection because medieval medicine is terrible and your lord couldn't be bothered to send a medic for common soldiers, only for officers of higher rank. Your funeral is elaborate. People speak of your honor, your service, your dedication to duty. They don't mention the psychological trauma, the friends lost to pointless conflicts, the childhood stolen by a system that valued warriors over children, the decades of emotional suppression that made you a stranger to your own family. Your son performs the rituals perfectly, showing no emotion, maintaining perfect composure, exactly as you taught him. You'd be proud if you weren't dead. Actually, you'd probably be proud anyway. That's the saddest part. The warrior tradition continues for generations after you, becoming more romanticized with each passing era until eventually, people forget that being a samurai wasn't a noble adventure, but a psychological prison with really good aesthetic design and excellent swordsmanship. Your story becomes a legend about honor and duty, with all the suffering edited out because it doesn't fit the narrative people want to believe. They make movies about warriors like you, showing the beautiful armor and dramatic battles, but not the dysentery, the PTSD, or the soul-crushing realization that you've wasted your life serving a system that never cared about you. Not bad for a kid who just wanted to eat his own foot instead of choosing between swords and brushes. If this journey through feudal Japan's warrior class made you appreciate that modern society lets children be children a bit longer and doesn't require them to commit ritual suicide over tea temperature, subscribe to Lasting Legacy for more stories about how history's glorious traditions looked from the inside, where the glory was mostly propaganda and the tradition was mostly trauma.